Welcome to the Home Education with Ease podcast. I'm your host, Christine Furman, a homeschool mom, entrepreneur, and educator with over 20 years of experience in the areas of elementary and special education. It's my mission to help you create lifelong learners and embrace a holistic approach to education at home. I'll be sharing practical strategies, inspiration, and resources to support your family. Whether you're a stay-at-home mom, a business owner, or balancing work and homeschool, you're in the right place to connect with a community that values education just as much as you do. Join us each week as we ditch the stress, embrace the joy of learning, and set your family up for a lifetime of success. Welcome to Home Education with Ease. I'm your host, Christine Furman, and today on episode 56, we're diving into a topic that can transform the way you approach learning with your kids. Let's talk about how we can understand their learning styles, and then you'll be able to know how to meet them right where they are. Well, have you ever felt like your teaching methods just aren't clicking for one of your kiddos? Maybe you felt like you've taught this subject or this skill over and over again, and it's just not sinking in. Well, you're definitely not alone. And today we're going to discuss how to identify your child's unique learning style. We're going to talk about supporting their challenges and build their confidence as lifelong learners. Every child learns different. So let's dive in and explore the different learning styles, figure out how to adapt your teaching to fit each one of these learning styles, and come up with some strategies to help your kiddos overcome the obstacles and thrive and love learning. Well, what are these learning styles, right? So what is a learning style? So you may be asking that and you're like, I don't know. I just know that this is the curriculum that I have. This is the lesson that we are presented with, and this is what I'm supposed to teach them. Well, our learning styles refer to the way that each individual prefer to absorb, process, and retain information. So we all learn differently. And here are the main learning styles. So we have visual learners, which learn best through images, diagrams, drawings, written directions. So they're able to see what they're absorbing, what they're taking in, right? They're able to actually see it. So auditory learners prefer listening to it. So having a conversation, talking about the skill, discussions, music. And here is a little information about learning it through music. So I'm jumping ahead just a little bit here, but I remember hearing that patients with Alzheimer's, the last thing to go for them is music. And I even witnessed this firsthand with some family members that they may not be communicating effectively in any other way, but they could sing hymns and music that they remembered or they learned when they were children. And that is so amazing to me. So that's an auditorial learner. So they prefer listening and they absorb things through song and music. Okay. Kinesthetic learners thrive on hands-on activities, movement, physical interaction with materials. Reading, writing learners, they learn best through reading text, writing notes, that like doing of like that connection between listening, reading it, and then taking notes. So most learners have a mix of all of these styles. But understanding what their dominant style is going to help us teach our kiddos more efficiently and more effectively. And I'm sure you're already thinking right now, like, this kiddo is more this learner, this style, right? And this kiddo is more this style, but they can do both, right? Or they like this. So what I would love is I would love for you to join me in the Home Education with Ease Facebook group. And let's talk about it. Let's talk about your learners and what their style is. And maybe what are some things that have worked for you. And then also, I would love to know if you have any questions. If you're like, Christine, I don't even understand these different learning styles, and I don't know how to adapt the curriculum that I already have to meet their learning styles, or how do I come up with activities to meet their needs? That's where I can come in and help you. Because as a educator with a special education background, I present material in a way that best fit my students' needs. I had an entire classroom and they all learned differently and they were at all different levels. And I had to figure out what is my main topic and how am I presenting it and teaching it to them in a way that best fits their needs, their ability, and their learning needs as well, and different modifications and adaptations that needed to be done for each of those students. So that knowledge and experience that I have in that area has now helped me to create the curriculum that I've created, EduPlay Learning, which is all multisensory. So again, we're talking about songs, we're talking about movement. We're getting up and we're getting in the kitchen and we're doing science experiments and we're reading and doing math. And as I write this curriculum, I look at the skills and I say, what activities could you do to teach these skills? What materials in your home could you use to teach these skills? What experiences could you have with your kiddos to teach these skills? Because a lot of the times we just have to take the things in our home, look at the skill, and maybe you need someone like me to say, hey, here is an idea. Maybe that's something that you can't come up with and you can't figure out. Well, Christine, I don't know how to come up with an activity to teach this skill except for what they're telling me in the book. Great. That is where you and I can come together and I can really support you on your educational journey because that lights me up so much. And I love helping families meet their kids right where they're at by providing them with curriculum, with ideas, with activities that are fun and meaningful and truly, truly shape them into lifelong learners. That is what it's all about. So that's why our learning styles are so important because we have to look at our kiddos and say, how do they learn best? For myself, I definitely am a mix of all of them. And I guess it just depends too. I like to write notes and take notes, but I love to do things. I love to have hands-on approach to activities and to skills because I feel like that is what helps us sink in. So for me, I definitely am very multisensory and I see that in my own kids too. So there are certain skills that I'm like, yep, definitely more kinesthetic, definitely more reading, writing. But all of the things come together. And when we bring all of these learning styles together, it really helps us to learn that very cohesive way and, just be able to remember the material a lot longer as well. So I definitely would love to know what are some of the learning styles that your kiddos have and how can I help you on that journey of figuring out what learning style best fits your kiddos. So let's talk about a little bit more. How can we identify our kiddos' learning style? So first things first is we can just do some observation. We can be paying attention to how your child naturally engages with the world. Do they gravitate toward drawing, talking, building things? My daughter, if we go right with those questions right there, my daughter loves to draw. She loves to have conversations. That's how we really talk it out, right? For me, I definitely love to talk and teach in that way. And then for my son, definitely building, right? He is always building Legos, constructing different things, coming up with different ideas. And I just love seeing that whenever they're just playing, right? When they have free play or when they're maybe out of class and you're like, well, how are they learning best? You can just be just watching them do free play at your home. Or if they are at a class or somewhere else, outside playing with other kids, What is a way that they interact? What do they like to do the most? So kind of keep that in mind. Just start observing them, observing their interactions. And then you can start asking yourself these questions. What activities keep their attention the longest? So my kiddos, both of them actually could build Legos for hours. So if you have that, they really like to be doing a lot more hands-on. If they are drawing, they are more of that, visual kind of a learner. If they are reading and writing notes, that would be more of that reading, writing. And if they're having conversation like, hey, I just watched this show, or I just read this book, or we just learned this in school, and they're talking about it, that's where your auditory learners come in. So many great questions right there to be asking ourselves while we're observing our kiddos. And then again, how are they responding to instructions? So let's think about that. Whenever we present them with any kind of instruction, directions, or anything like that, it could be getting ready in the morning, right? Do they prefer hearing it, seeing it, or doing it and just getting it done? So for us, definitely hearing it, right? But seeing it would be things like a checklist. If your kiddos thrive on a checklist, or if you're like, oh my goodness, I cannot get my kids to do X, Y, and Z, it could be morning routine, right? Getting ready for the day. Try making a checklist. So then that way they can see it. Then if they're checking it off, they can do it. And if you're reinforcing it by saying it, they're also hearing it. So you see how these learning styles, you could address all of them at the same time by doing small little things, maybe small changes. And this is where I really thrive, and I love being able to help in this area, because sometimes we're just like, what do we do next? How do I, get my kids to follow the instructions? How do I get this skill across? And sometimes I can say, hey, well, what have you done? What has worked? What hasn't worked? And I could say, why don't you try this instead? And most of the time, it's a success when I give those suggestions. So keep that in mind if you are looking for just a little bit more support here in this kind of area of being able to help you educate your kiddos and really allowing the day to go smoothly, and allowing, the time that you are teaching them to go smoothly. Because really, these learning styles do kind of go all throughout the whole day, right? Like I said, with that morning routine, you're not necessarily sitting down and doing schoolwork at that time. But if you were to kind of make a small tweak and say, let's make a checklist, well, now you've been able to incorporate their learning styles and allow the morning routine to flow a lot easier. So again, the biggest thing here, big mission of mine, is really how can families enjoy the time together, make it peaceful, make it easy, and just really enjoy the moments, make the memories, and really, you know, encourage our kids to be lifelong learners. So it's really all of these things kind of really come together. And then the last question to ask yourself is, when are they most enthusiastic about learning? Is it when you go on a field trip and they're like, oh my gosh, mom, did you know X, Y, and Z, all of the facts that they've learned? Or did they just watch a show? Or are they listening to music or an audiobook? So thinking about that, I remember, and I've told this story before, but my kiddos were younger and I was starting to incorporate Spanish into our lessons. And I have this one program and they have videos, and I would just pop it on the iPad or the computer, and I would let my kids play with blocks. So they were doing something while they were listening to the Spanish lesson. And two things can happen here. One, they're still absorbing information as they're listening and playing, right? I'm a huge component of that, a huge advocate for our kids are listening all the time. So by having that on in the background while they build blocks, they're still absorbing at least some of it. The other thing that could happen, and did happen often, was when they were watching or listening while they were building, sometimes they would stop building and join in on the lesson and they would be paying attention to that lesson. So those are some ways that you could start looking at your kiddos and say, you know what? Sure, here are your blocks while I start teaching you something. Now I need you to retell what I just told you. Or some of the ways are like having them get up and show you. All right, guys, we're going to talk and we're going to practice our addition facts, right? Show me what you know. And having them get up and do it and move. And I know for us, we are big movers. We do a combination of all of the things where we are up and we are moving, we are sitting, we are learning and listening and watching, we are on the board, we are playing games, we're singing songs and talking about it. So again, very multisensory. This is where EduPlay learning curriculum is really good for all learning types because it does address all of the learning styles and it allows our kiddos to be able to learn the skill in a way that best fits their needs. So here's a practical exercise that you can try out to kind of check their learning styles. Let's say practicing those math facts. Do they like to do it where they're reading it out loud? Do they like to use flashcards? Do they like to build or put things together to show the addition problem, right? Manipulatives or anything really. It does not have to be anything fancy. It could be Legos, and you could be adding and having Legos on hand and saying, okay, great. Here's your math problem. 5 plus 5. Well, show me 5 and show me 5 more. How many do we have all together? Or do they want to do those flashcards? Or do they just want to listen to it and have you say it and have them say it out loud, right? Or do they want to write it down? So all of these different ways, observe the ways that you present the material to them and figure out how it resonates most with them as they're doing it. And it may change. So by observing it and maybe even getting a journal and starting to mark these things down and say, well, today they really enjoyed learning with Legos. But maybe tomorrow they were really excited to practice the flashcards. And that's okay. Maybe it is a combination of all of them. But if you continue to document it, journal, and observe, you'll be able to see which one is more prominent. So keep those kind of things in mind. And I want to also share with you, I have created a learning style cheat sheet. Okay, so it's just a quick reference so you can identify and support each style. So you can check that in the show notes below, grab that and check it out, try it out. And then if you have any questions, be sure to reach out to me directly. Well, what do we do and how do we support our kiddos? So let's talk about the strategies that we're going to use to support their challenges and build their confidence, because these are two very, very important things for me. When I talk about meeting kids right where they're at, I figure out what is a skill that they're struggling with and what is a skill that they're really good at. And we address both of them and we say, I'm going to support you in this skill because it's challenging. And how can I support you? And then we're just going to keep building their confidence in that area that they are doing really well in. And we're just going to keep lifting them up along the way, encouraging them as they continue on this journey and supporting their challenges. So let's talk about how you can support your kiddos on their journey and according to their learning style. Maybe you've addressed it already. You've identified it. Now, how can you support them? So we've talked about a few of these already, but visual learners are going to really enjoy charts, videos, color-coded materials. So think about those kind of things. Think about how can I present them with something that actually they can see what we're doing. And maybe that's getting up and writing on the board, right? So that's, again, doing, because we're doing it, we're writing it, we're up and we're moving, and we're writing it on the board. So then that way they can see it as well. And then you discuss it, and there you go. You've addressed all learners at the same time. Auditory learners are going to incorporate the discussions audiobooks, songs. And again, that those songs are really, really important and really helpful for them to continue to learn and keep those skills well beyond and retain them. So, one of the things that I saw was music is a positive therapy to help improve memory, social connection, and mood. And I know for us in our home, music is definitely our mood booster. So, in the morning, as we're getting ready and kind of moving throughout our morning routine, we're playing K Love and we are just ready and amping up for the day. And then when we're in our room, sometimes we'll have some music on in the background, very lightly playing. I know that instrumental music is really good for the brain. So maybe that's a whole nother episode, is like the different frequencies. I've really been interested in that. And I've seen a couple reels lately talking about the different frequencies of music and how they affect our brain. So I think that is really interesting. And I don't know that much about it, but of course, with some research, we can really dive into that because I know for sure music lifts my mood. Definitely. And I remember even when my kids were little and I was in the thick of it all, right? I had a 3 and 5-year-old. I just started my business. The pandemic was hitting. We're ready to move to Georgia. And I mean, there were some challenging days, and my husband was traveling. So it was just me and the kids. And I would struggle. And they would say, "Hey, mommy, why don't we put on your favorite song?" And not only one, did that just make me so happy that they were even thinking of me and how can we, help mommy feel better, but also for them to know right then and there that there are ways to boost our mood with things around us. So that is definitely something. So thinking about music and, helping our kiddos, maybe that's educational songs, maybe it's music in the background, maybe it's audiobooks, videos. I mean, videos for visual learners, but also auditory learners, they're listening to it as well. So, all right. So then we have kinesthetic learners, which they love experiments, role playing, active games. So theater, things like that. Again, when they're up and they're moving, maybe they're acting out a historical figure. Maybe they are getting up and they are reading their story aloud and they're acting out the characters, making a game. I know my kids have definitely done this where we've talked about the savannah. And next thing I know, they have all of their stuffed animals, all the animals that we have, and they're making a savannah. And it was exciting to see them take the lesson that we were learning and put it into action and really just, here, these animals are at the watering hole and this animal is hiding in its den, and they're able then to talk about each of the different types of animals. They're talking about what they're doing. And I just thought that was really cool to see that in action. So again, they could be doing all of these things, which in my opinion is really a great way to be learning. And it's a great way for us to be presenting that material to them. So then that way they're learning on all different levels. But if they have one learning style that they really lean into, that's the one we want to also mark down and say, oh my gosh, they're really best at learning this way. And then that's going to help too when it gets to a skill or a lesson that's a challenge and say, oh, you know what? How can I adapt this lesson to best fit their needs? And keeping that in mind as well. So for our final learning style, then we have that reading, writing, and encouraging journaling, writing, making lists, research projects. So again, writing the facts down. I have one kiddo, Ella, she'll write for me and she has no problem with it. She writes stories and she will write facts about things that we've learned. Where Alex, he would much rather do something. He would rather show me instead of write. And of course, we do all of them. So he's still writing in different ways, but I do know that that area is not as strong for him. So how can I best meet him where he's at? And how can he present the information that he learned in that way? So here are some ways that you can overcome these challenges. And we've talked about them a little bit, right? Meeting them where they're at. But for learners who are struggling, let's focus on breaking down the tasks into smaller steps and celebrating those small wins. Let's go back to Alex where he preferred not to write, right? We just did a whole little research project on Charles Dickens, the Victorian era, and how the children worked in these factories at this time, right? And we're writing down facts and we're learning these things. And Ella, she writes this whole page down and draws a picture, all of the things. And Alex was more of a struggle for him, but he did it, and every time I would just give him some new idea, right? Instead of writing all of these things down, here's a Post-it note. Write me down the important facts on this small Post-it note. So now I gave him a specific area to write. And then you're going to put that on your poster. You're just going to stick it right on there, right? And then you're going to tell me, and after he writes that one fact, we celebrate it and say, yes, that's awesome. You did a great job. What's another fact? Can you find me 2 more facts? So by breaking these tasks into smaller chunks, we're building their confidence because we're saying, great job. Instead of giving them this huge project, this huge task, and they say, I have no idea. I have no idea where to start. I don't know what to do. Now they're struggling. Their confidence is plummeting. They want to give up. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've definitely felt like that myself with my own projects where I'm like, I can't. This project is too big. What do I even do? How do I start? But when I start scaling it back and looking for those small wins, break it down and say, yes, I can do this. And celebrate that. Celebrate that for yourself. Celebrate that for your kids. Another thing that we can do for our kiddos is just providing that extra time for them for those difficult subjects and adjusting to the expectations as needed. The whole point of us educating our kids at home really is allowing us to say, we don't have a timeline to follow. We don't have anyone else's schedule to follow but our own. And just like we talked about in last episode, we talked about schedules. Our schedule can change season to season. And some seasons, we may be like, yes, 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 moving on to the next thing, moving on to the next thing. And then sometimes maybe there's other things that are impacting our education at that time. And maybe we just have to take it slower. Or maybe it's actually a new skill that is a challenge. And we just have to step back and say, okay, let's figure out how you can understand this, because that's the beauty of it all. We have that flexibility and freedom to say, let's step back and make sure that you understand this. Make sure that you're confident in this skill. You may not get it 100%, but I want to make sure you know how to do it. And once you can do that, then we can move on to the next step. That's huge. That is really a huge part of us being able to educate our kids at home, is that we have no one's schedule but our own to follow. And we can take as much time as we need to support our kids. And then all of these things are going to really help build their confidence. We're going to be offering them positive reinforcement every step of the way. When Alex would write down one Post-it note, yes, great job, buddy. That is awesome. That's a great fact. Now, what's another one? So we're celebrating each of these steps, not the whole project at one time, right? Every step of the way is a win. Think about that for yourself too, as you're setting up your goals and what you want to accomplish this year. I know I've had to take some steps back and say, yes, I have huge projects. I have huge goals. But what are these small wins that I can take each day, each week to move the needle forward, to say you are working towards that big goal? And the same thing goes for our kids. What is one small step that they're taking to work towards achieving that skill or that goal? And celebrate that and give them that positive reinforcement. because that's going to build their confidence. And then creating these opportunities for them to showcase their strengths. So maybe they can teach something on the board and say, oh my goodness, I want to see if you can do that. Or can you show your sibling how to do this skill? Because I'm pretty sure you know how to do this. Can you just show them? Can you be the teacher for a minute? Or maybe it's learning it in a different way. Hey, you know what? We're going to be doing addition facts. Why don't you go get your Legos? Why don't we go outside and let's practice writing our facts down on the sidewalk, or let's go for a walk and practice our facts while we're on our walk, right? So really just creating these opportunities for them to showcase their strengths, grabbing their blocks and building something and saying, yes, I did that. I created that, or I was able to accomplish that, because that is their strength. And then also, all of this learning is just encouraging this growth mindset. And it's reminding them that mistakes are a part of learning. And each mistake allows them to get back up and try again. It's not a failure. I get to do this again. And I get to try it again in a different way. Because you know what? That way didn't work. But maybe if I try it a different way, it's going to work. So really just leaning into those mistakes and reminding them that, yes, we all make mistakes, and that's the beauty of it all, that we can make a mistake and we can get back up and try again. So I had a listener reach out and ask, well, what if my kids have completely opposite learning styles? So here's my advice, and we've talked about this a little bit. You could rotate the learning styles, or you can combine them and do both of them, right? So EduPlay Learning Curriculum, we do this and we do it really well because it is a multi-sensory curriculum. And it has helped families with this challenge because it says, here's the skill. And now we can teach it by doing it. We can teach it by watching a video with Miss Christine. We can teach it by discussing it. Because even in that video, I give you, as the parent, some topics and some discussion points that you can ask your kids. Hey, why don't you ask them this to reinforce the skill? Or why don't you go get your cars while we do this math skill and practice it? Or we're going to be reading, so let's figure out how we can learn this reading skill by doing it, by making it relatable to our lives and relatable to what we're doing at the time. Maybe we're reading a specific book. And let's take that reading skill and dive into that book that we're so excited to read. So that is something that I highly, highly suggest. I suggest, one, observing your kiddos, figuring out what their learning style is, and being able to support them and offer the material in a multi-sensory way. And if you need help with this, be sure to reach out for sure. But what I would love, I'm going to encourage you again, join the Facebook group, Home Education with Ease, and share your child's learning style. And let's share some ideas of how you support them. Because maybe an idea that you have may be able to help another mom that's like, oh my gosh, I never even thought of that idea. So I encourage you, get in that Facebook group and be able to share some ideas or ask some questions, because I'll be in there as well. And I can share some of my suggestions with you in that group as well. Well, today we discussed how to identify your child's learning style, how to adapt your teaching style to best fit their needs, and then to support them and really build up their confidence each step of the way. Just remember that each child learns differently. And that's the beauty of educating your kids at home. You can adapt to meet their needs in a way that makes the most sense for them and for your family. This helps all families as well, whether you're homeschooling your kiddos or if they're at school, because I also work with families that their kiddos are in school. And I am able then to work with them and say, I really think this is how your kiddo learns the best. And now I know that they're not going to be able to totally meet their needs in the classroom, but here are some suggestions that you could do at home, or we can share with the teachers and be able to help meet their kids. So this really is helpful for all families, no matter where your kiddos are at. And it's helpful too, even for younger kiddos as they're starting to navigate, learning. And you can really start watching them and say, wow, how do you learn best? What did they really gravitate to? Do they want to build more? Do they want to listen to music? Do they want to, talk it out? I know a toddler's not going to really talk it out with you, but keeping that in mind, do they want to snuggle up and read? And are they excited to sit there and read with you? So keep all of those learning styles in mind as you are watching your kiddos. And then don't forget, grab that learning styles cheat sheet. And that link is going to be in the show notes below. That is a free resource for you to check out. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and then share it with another family that this would be helpful for. I really, really appreciate you being here, and I appreciate your support. Join me next week as we explore more strategies for creating lifelong learners. But until then, keep embracing the joy of learning one day at a time. And don't forget, join that Home Education with Ease Facebook group, share your kiddos' learning style, and share ways that I can support you on your educational journey. Thank you for tuning in to the Home Education with Ease podcast. I hope today's episode left you feeling empowered and ready to take the next steps on your home education journey. Your support means the world to me. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend. For even more resources, be sure to join the free Facebook group, Home Education with Ease, and visit eduplaylearning.com to explore programs and subscription kits. You can find the links and any other links mentioned in this episode in the show notes below. Remember, you're not alone. This community is here to support you every step of the way.